The Sorathi scientist did not even lower his voice when he said it. Why do they allow gravity-bound primitives on research stations? The human cannot possibly contribute anything useful. Dr. Amara Okonkwo kept her eyes on her microscope. She had learned long ago that reacting only made things worse. 2 years on Way Station 16 had taught her patience. The aliens spoke about her like she was furniture. Sometimes she wondered if they forgot she could understand them perfectly. They joined the compact barely a century ago, another scientist added. Their species still fights over resources on their own planet. Barbaric. Amara adjusted the focus on her sample. A microorganism from a nearby moon wiggled under the lens. She found more warmth in that tiny creature than in most of her colleagues. The laboratory door slid open. Rin entered quickly, gray feathers ruffled with anxiety. The young Kesari engineer was one of the few beings on the station who treated Amara like a person. Commissioner Helix is conducting surprise inspections, Rin whispered. All departments. He started on level 3 and he is working his way down. Thank you for the warning. Amara saved her data and began organizing her workspace. Are you not worried? My work is in order. Are you worried about yours? Rin's feathers flattened slightly. I made some modifications to the atmospheric processors, unauthorized modifications. They work better now, but Commissioner Helix does not like initiative from junior staff. Amara smiled. Then maybe stay away from level 3 for a while. The station hummed around them. Way Station 16 was old, built into a hollowed asteroid decades before humans ever reached space. It served ships traveling between the inner colonies and the frontier worlds. 400 beings lived here. Only 3 were human. Amara had taken this posting because she wanted to study alien life forms. She had not expected to become one herself. An alarm screamed through the station. The floor shook violently. Amara grabbed her desk as equipment crashed around her. Rin fell against the wall, crying out in fear. Then everything went dark. Emergency lights flickered on, painting the laboratory in dim red. The shaking stopped, but the station groaned like a wounded animal. What happened? Rin asked. Impact, something hit us. Amara moved toward the door. We need to get to the emergency. Shelters. They ran through corridors filled with confused aliens. The artificial gravity fluctuated strangely, making each step uncertain. Amara felt heavy one moment and light the next. They reached the main lift just as Commissioner Helix arrived with his security chief, Overseer Glynn. The commissioner was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and 4 delicate arms. Glynn looked similar but carried himself with military stiffness. The lift is not responding, Helix said. We must use the maintenance stairs. An elderly Bavrani navigator named Thul joined them, moving carefully on his 6 slender legs. 2 Bavrani technicians followed behind him. They descended into the substrate level, the lowest section of the station. Here the power generators and life support systems kept everyone alive. They found chaos. The ceiling had collapsed. Massive support beams lay scattered like broken bones. Sparks flew from ruptured power conduits. The air smelled of burning metal. Another tremor shook the station. More debris fell. Move, Glynn shouted. They ran. Behind them, the corridor filled with falling wreckage. They dove through a doorway just as a wall of metal sealed them off from the rest of the station. Silence. Amara counted heads in the dim emergency light. Commissioner Helix, Overseer Glynn, Rin, Navigator Thul, 2 Bavrani technicians. 7 beings trapped in a maintenance corridor. Is anyone injured? She asked. The aliens checked themselves. Bruises and scrapes, nothing serious. Glynn tried his communication device. Static. He tried again, nothing. Communications are down, he reported. The collapse must have damaged the relay systems. Helix looked around with wide, frightened eyes, his 4 arms wrapped around himself. How much air do we have? Rin checked a wall panel. The recyclers are damaged but functional. I estimate 6 hours before oxygen becomes critical. 6 hours, Helix's voice trembled. Rescue teams will find us by then, they must. Thull spoke slowly, his ancient voice calm. The substrate level is rarely visited. Rescue teams may not search here for some time. Then we find our own way out. Amara walked toward the collapsed end of the corridor. There has to be another route. The emergency lift shaft is on the other side of this debris, Rin said. If we can reach it, we can climb to safety. Amara examined the wreckage blocking their path. Twisted metal, broken panels, shattered conduits. And in the center of it all, a massive support beam lay across the only possible passage. The beam was thick as a tree trunk and twice as long. Can we cut through it? Helix asked. Glenn checked his security tools. My cutting beam is nearly depleted. It would take hours. We do not have hours. Amara studied the beam. She walked around it, testing its weight with her hands. The metal was solid, heavy, but not impossible. The aliens had already dismissed the obstacle as unmovable. They were discussing other options, none of them good. Amara had not said anything yet. She was still calculating. She looked at her hands, small hands by alien standards, but hands that had grown strong on a world that pulled everything down with relentless force. She made her decision. Everyone, she said quietly, I need you to step back. Nobody moved. The aliens stared at Amara like she had spoken in a language they did not understand. Commissioner Helix blinked his large eyes several times. Step back from what? Glenn asked. His tone suggested he thought Amara had lost her mind from stress. From the beam, Amara removed her laboratory coat and folded it neatly. I am going to move it. Silence filled the corridor. Then Glenn laughed. It was not a kind laugh. Move it, that beam weighs 400 kilograms at minimum. Even our loading machines would struggle with it. He gestured at Amara's small frame. You are half my height and probably a third of my mass. What exactly do you think you are going to do? I think I am going to lift it. Rin stepped forward, feathers pressed flat with worry. Amara, please, I know you want to help, but this is not possible. We should focus on finding another solution. There is no other solution. Amara rolled her shoulders, loosening muscles that had spent 2 years operating at partial capacity. The beam is blocking our only exit. We cannot cut through it. We cannot go around it, so it must be moved. The human has gone mad, Glenn said to Helix. The stress has broken her mind. We should restrain her before she injures herself. Navigator Thull had remained silent, watching Amara with ancient, knowing eyes. Now he spoke. Let her try. Everyone turned to look at the old Bavrani. You cannot be serious, Helix said. I am always serious, Commissioner. It is one of the few benefits of advanced age. Thull moved aside on his 6 legs, creating space. Let the human try. Glenn's face twisted with frustration. This is absurd. We are wasting precious time on fantasy. Then prove me wrong. Amara walked to the beam and positioned herself beneath its center. All of you together, try to move it first. Show me it cannot be done. The challenge hung in the air. Glenn's pride would not let him refuse. He moved to one end of the beam. Helix hesitated, then joined him with all 4 arms ready to push. Rin and the 2 Bavrani technicians took positions along its length. On 3, Glenn commanded. 1, 2, 3. They pushed. Nothing happened. They pushed harder. Glenn's face turned dark blue with effort. Helix made a sound of strain. Rin's feathers stood straight up from exertion. The beam did not move. Not a millimeter, not a fraction of a millimeter. They stopped breathing hard. Glenn leaned against the wall, his legs shaking. You see, he gasped. Impossible. The thing might as well be welded to the floor. Amara nodded calmly. Thank you for demonstrating. Now please move aside. The aliens retreated, some confused, some annoyed, some simply exhausted. They watched as Amara crouched beneath the beam. She placed her hands flat against the metal. It was cold and rough. She found her grip, adjusted her footing, and took a slow breath. She thought about home. She thought about Lagos, where she was born, the city of 20 million people, all of them living under Earth's heavy hand. She remembered carrying water jugs during the shortages when she was young. Each jug weighed 20 kilograms, and she carried two at a time because her family needed her to. She remembered her father's mechanic shop, where she learned to lift engine blocks before she learned algebra. She remembered her grandmother, who worked the markets until she was 80 years old, hauling goods on her back every single day. "The world made us strong," her grandmother used to say, "so we could carry others." Amara tightened her grip. She pushed upward. Her legs drove into the floor, her back straightened. Her arms became pillars of focused power. The beam groaned, and it rose. Amara did not see the aliens' faces. She was focused entirely on the weight in her hands, on her breathing, on the careful balance of muscle and bone that kept the mass moving upward. She felt every kilogram. Her body remembered what it meant to live on a world that never stopped pulling down. She walked the beam to the side, step by careful step. Then she lowered it gently to the floor, away from the passage. She stood up straight and turned around. 5 aliens stared at her in complete silence. Commissioner Helix's 4 arms hung limp at his sides. His mouth was open, but no sound came out. Rin's feathers had fluffed to twice their normal size. The Bavrani technicians pressed against each other in shock. Even Glynn could not speak. His eyes were wide, his expression frozen somewhere between disbelief and fear. The corridor was silent, except for Amara's steady breathing. Finally, Navigator Thull moved forward. The old Bavrani dipped his head in a gesture of deep respect. "Heavy worlder," he said softly, "I thought your kind were only legends." "What is a heavy worlder?" Rin asked, voice barely above a whisper. Thull kept his eyes on Amara. "A being born on a world of crushing gravity, a world so heavy that walking is an act of strength, a world that makes its children into something the rest of us cannot imagine." He paused. "I thought such worlds could not produce intelligent life. I thought the gravity would crush any thinking creature before it could build civilization." He looked at Amara with new understanding. "I was wrong." Amara wiped sweat from her forehead. "Earth is 1G, she said simply. "Most of your worlds are 0.2 to 0.4 G. I have been living at reduced strength since I arrived here." She looked at the cleared passage ahead. "We should keep moving. There will be more obstacles." They walked in silence through the cleared passage. Nobody knew what to say. Amara led the way, stepping over debris with practiced ease. Behind her, the aliens moved carefully, still processing what they had witnessed. Rin caught up to walk beside Amara. The young Kesari kept glancing at her, then looking away quickly. "You can ask," Amara said. "Ask what?" "Whatever question is making your feathers twitch like that." Rin hesitated. "Does it hurt being strong like that?" Amara considered the question. "Not usually. On Earth it is normal. Everyone is strong there. Children carry water, elders carry groceries. It is just life." She paused. "Here on low-gravity stations I sometimes feel too light, like I might float away. My muscles get restless from not being used." "But you look tired after lifting the beam." "That beam was heavy even by Earth standards, and I have not done hard work in 2 years. My body is out of practice." Behind them, Glynn muttered something to Helix. Amara pretended not to hear. The security chief was struggling to accept what he had seen. His entire understanding of the universe had cracked. They reached a junction where the corridor split in 2 directions. Both paths were partially blocked with debris. "Which way?" Helix asked. Navigator Thull studied the walls, reading markings that others could not see. "Left leads to the emergency lift shaft. Right leads to a dead end." "Left it is." They turned left and immediately faced a new problem. A section of ceiling had collapsed, creating a pile of wreckage that reached from floor to what remained of the roof. There was a gap near the top, but it was high and narrow. We must climb, Thull observed. Glynn tried first. He reached for a handhold, pulled himself up, and immediately slipped back down. His arms simply could not support his weight against the gravity, even at reduced levels. Helix attempted next, using all 4 arms. He made it slightly higher before falling. Rin did not even try. The young engineer knew their limits. Amara studied the climb. It was not technically difficult. Plenty of handholds, stable footing points. On Earth, any healthy adult could make it. Here, among beings who had never climbed anything in their lives, it was impossible. "I will go up first," she said. "Then I will help each of you." She began climbing. Her hands found grips easily. Her arms pulled her weight without complaint. Within 30 seconds, she reached the gap at the top. On the other side, the corridor continued. The emergency lift shaft was visible in the distance. "The path is clear," she called down. "Rin, you first. Climb as high as you can." Rin approached the debris pile nervously. The Kesari started climbing, managing to reach about halfway before their arms gave out. They clung to the wreckage, unable to go up or down. Amara reached down. "Take my hand." Rin looked up with frightened eyes. "I will pull you down. I am too heavy." "You weigh about 40 kilograms. On Earth, I used to carry twice that for fun. Take my hand." Rin grabbed Amara's wrist. Amara pulled. The Kesari rose smoothly through the air and over the top of the pile, landing safely on the other side. One by one, Amara lifted them all. The Bavrani. Technicians light as children. Navigator Thull, careful and dignified. Commissioner Helix, who apologized 3 times during the process. Finally, only Glynn remained. The security chief stood at the bottom, staring up at Amara's extended hand. His face showed a war of emotions: pride, shame, fear, anger. "I do not need help from a primitive," he said. "Then climb." He tried. He made it 1 meter up before his muscles failed. He hung there, trembling, unable to advance or retreat. "Overseer Glynn," Amara said calmly. "You can insult me after we are safe. Right now you need to choose pride or survival." A long moment passed. Glynn reached up and took her hand. She pulled him over the debris pile like he weighed nothing. He landed on the other side and immediately stepped away from her, not meeting her eyes. "Thank you," he said quietly. The words seemed to cause him physical pain. Amara simply nodded and continued forward. They reached the emergency lift shaft. The doors were jammed shut, sealed by the station's safety protocols during the impact. Amara wedged her fingers into the gap between the doors. She pulled. Metal groaned in protest. The doors opened. Inside the shaft, the lift car sat dark and silent 3 levels above them. A maintenance ladder ran up the wall, disappearing into darkness. "The lift has no power," Rin observed. "The backup generator must be offline." "Where is the generator?" 3 levels up. There is an access panel near the lift car. Amara looked up the ladder. It stretched far above them, barely visible in the emergency lighting. The climb would be long. "I will go," she said. "Alone?" Helix asked. "The climb is dangerous." "I am the only one who can make it." Nobody argued. They all knew it was true. Amara grabbed the first rung of the ladder. The metal was cold under her fingers. "Wait here," she said. "I will send the lift down when I reach the generator." She began to climb. Behind her, 5 aliens watched in silence as the human disappeared into the darkness above. They stood together in the dim light of the emergency shaft, waiting for someone they had dismissed as primitive to save their lives. The ladder seemed endless in the darkness. Amara climbed steadily, hand over hand, rung after rung. Her muscles worked in rhythm: left hand up, left foot, right foot, repeat. She counted rungs to keep her mind focused. 100. 200, 300. The station creaked and groaned around her. Small pieces of debris fell past, clattering against the walls of the shaft. The artificial gravity continued to fluctuate, making each pull slightly different than the last. She thought about her father. He was probably asleep right now in Lagos, unaware that his daughter was climbing through a damaged space station 1,000 light years from home. He had not wanted her to go to space. He said the universe was not ready for humans yet. Maybe he was right. 400 rungs, 500. Her arms began to burn. 2 years of light duty had softened her. On Earth, she could have made this climb without thinking. Here, after 2 years of reduced gravity, her body had forgotten what real work felt like. She kept climbing. 600 rungs, 700. Below her, the aliens waited. 5 beings who had never carried anything heavier than a data tablet. 5 beings who thought of humans as primitive animals, barely civilized, a curiosity admitted to the Galactic Compact out of pity or amusement. 800 rungs, 900. Her hands were cramping now. Her shoulders screamed for rest. Sweat ran down her face and dripped into the darkness below. 1,000 rungs. She reached the access panel. The backup generator sat behind a metal cover, dormant and cold. A manual crank protruded from its side, designed for maintenance robots to use in emergencies. Amara grabbed the crank and tried to turn it. It did not move. She adjusted her grip and tried again. The resistance was enormous. The crank was calibrated for machines, not organic beings. Even on Earth, this would have been difficult. Here, after the climb, after everything, it felt impossible. She closed her eyes and thought about the aliens waiting below. Commissioner Helix, who had never known physical fear until today. Overseer Glynn, whose pride could not accept help from someone he considered inferior. Rin, who had been her only friend on this station. Navigator Thull, who saw things others could not. They were all going to die if she failed. Amara opened her eyes. She wrapped both hands around the crank. She planted her feet against the wall. She took 3 deep breaths. Then she pulled with everything she had. Her arms felt like they were tearing from her shoulders. Her back arched with effort. Her teeth clenched so hard she thought they might crack. The crank moved. 1 centimeter, 2, 3. She kept pulling. The crank turned slowly, grinding against resistance. Every millimeter was a victory. Every rotation was a battle. The generator hummed to life. Lights flickered in the shaft. The lift car above her powered on with a soft whine. Amara released the crank and nearly fell from the ladder. Her arms hung limp at her sides. She could barely grip the rungs anymore. But she was smiling. She climbed onto the lift car and found the controls. Simple buttons, down arrow. She pressed it. The lift descended smoothly through the shaft, carrying her back to the others. When the doors opened, 5 aliens stood waiting in the dim light. They stared at her. Amara knew how she must look, sweat-soaked, shaking, barely able to stand. She leaned against the lift wall for support. "Get in," she said. "The lift is working." They entered quickly. Rin moved to support Amara, offering a feathered arm for balance. "You look terrible," Rin said. "I feel terrible," Amara managed a weak laugh, "but we are going to live." The lift rose through the shaft, carrying them away from the darkness. Commissioner Helix cleared his throat. "Dr. Okonkwo." Amara looked at him. "I owe you an apology," Helix said. "Not just for today, for 2 years of dismissing you and your species. I thought humans were admitted to the compact as a novelty. I was wrong." Glynn stood in the corner of the lift, arms crossed, face unreadable. "Overseer," Helix said, "do you have anything to say?" Glynn was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke without looking at Amara. "My grandmother used to tell stories about heavy worlders, beings of impossible strength from planets of crushing gravity. She said they were monsters, conquerors, destroyers of civilizations." He finally met Amara's eyes. "You could have let us die down there. You could have saved yourself and left us behind." "I could have," Amara agreed. "Why did you not?" Amara thought about her grandmother in Lagos. Strong hands that built and carried and lifted for 80 years. A voice that taught her what strength was really for. Because strength is not about what you can take, she said. It is about what you can give. The lift reached the main level. The doors opened to emergency lights, rushing responders, and the relieved cries of station personnel. They had survived. Medical responders rushed forward as the lift doors opened. They went straight for Commissioner Helix, checking his forearms for injuries. Other medics attended to Glynn and the Bavrani technicians. Rin was gently guided toward a stretcher despite insisting they were fine. Nobody noticed Amara at first. She stood at the back of the lift, holding the wall for support. Her legs trembled. Her arms hung uselessly. The climb and the crank had taken more from her than she had realized. The human, Thull's voice cut through the chaos. Someone help the human. Medics turned and saw Amara properly for the first time. They hesitated. Most of them had never treated a human before. They did not know where to start. She needs fluids and rest, Rin called out, pulling away from their own stretcher. Her muscles are exhausted. Human muscles produce something called lactic acid when overworked. A Sorathi medic approached Amara cautiously, like she was an unknown species of animal. In a way, Amara supposed she was. Can you walk? The medic asked. I think so. She took one step and her legs gave out. Strong arms caught her before she hit the floor. She looked up to see Glynn holding her. The security chief said nothing. He simply lifted her and carried her to a medical stretcher, placing her down with surprising gentleness. She weighs nothing, Glynn muttered, more to himself than anyone else. 82 kilograms, Amara said weakly. Heavy by your standards. You feel like air. Amara smiled despite her exhaustion. That is because you never had to carry anything before. They moved her to the medical bay. The room was chaotic with injured personnel from all over the station. The asteroid impact had caused damage everywhere, but somehow their group from the substrate level had been the only one trapped. Amara lay on a bed while medics tried to figure out what to do with her. Human physiology was not in their training. They consulted data files and made guesses. Rin appeared at her bedside. I told them what I know about humans. It is not much, but it is something. Thank you. Thank you, you saved our lives multiple times. Rin's feathers rippled with emotion. Why did the others treat you so badly? Before today, I mean, you never did anything wrong. Amara closed her eyes. Fear, I think. Humans are new to the compact. We come from a world that should not have produced intelligent life. We survived things that would have killed any other species. That makes some people uncomfortable. Glynn said his grandmother told stories about heavy worlders. I heard. Amara opened her eyes again. There probably were heavy worlders in ancient times, strong species from high-gravity worlds. Maybe they were conquerors, maybe they were monsters. History tends to remember the worst of us. But you are not a monster. Neither were most heavy worlders, probably. Strength does not make someone evil. What they do with it does. Commissioner Helix entered the medical bay. He walked directly to Amara's bed, his forearms held formally at his sides. Dr. Okonkwo, he said, I am filing an official report with the Compact Archives. I want the record to show exactly what happened today, what you did for us. Amara shook her head. That is not necessary. It is necessary. Helix's voice was firm. For 2 years, I allowed prejudice to shape how this station treated you. I saw you as something less than the rest of us. Today, you showed me that I was wrong. The archives should know that humans are not primitives or novelties or curiosities. You are heroes. I am just a scientist who grew up on a heavy planet. You are more than that. The medical bay doors opened again. Navigator Thull entered, moving slowly on his 6 legs. He carried something in his front appendages, a small object wrapped in cloth. May I approach? He asked. Amara nodded. Thull reached her bedside and carefully unwrapped the cloth. Inside was a small stone, dark and smooth, polished by centuries of handling. This is from my homeworld, Thull said. We give it to those who carry others through darkness. The tradition is very old, from a time when my ancestors still walked on their own legs. Amara looked at the stone. I cannot accept this. You must. It is not a reward, it is recognition. Thul pressed the stone into her hand. Every generation there are a few who carry more than their share, who lift others when they cannot lift themselves. You are one of these. He stepped back. Strength is not merely physical, Dr. Okonkwo, but sometimes physical strength reveals the other kinds. I saw you help those who dismissed you. I saw you exhaust yourself for those who would not have done the same. That is true strength, and that is why your species will change the galaxy. Amara held the stone tightly. Outside the medical bay, the station continued. Its emergency operations. Crews worked to repair damage. Administrators coordinated rescue efforts. Life went on as it always did after disaster. But something had changed. Word was spreading through Way Station 16 about what had happened in the substrate level, about the human who lifted what the others could not. Amara closed her eyes and rested. The stone felt warm in her hand. 3 weeks passed. Way Station 16 slowly returned to normal. Repair crews fixed the structural damage. Engineers restored the power systems. The substrate level was rebuilt stronger than before. Amara returned to her laboratory on the first day it reopened. She expected the usual silence, the usual looks, the usual whispered conversations about the primitive human who somehow got a research position. Instead, the Sorathi scientist who had called her gravity-bound stood up when she entered. "Good morning, Dr. Okonkwo," he said. "Your samples from the Tesserae moon arrived while you were recovering. I took the liberty of storing them in climate-controlled containment. I hope that was acceptable." Amara stopped. In 2 years, this man had never spoken directly to her. "That was very kind," she managed. "Thank you. If you need assistance with your cataloging, I would be honored to help." She walked to her workstation, processing this new reality. Other scientists nodded at her as she passed. Some smiled. One young Bavrani researcher asked her opinion on a cellular structure he was studying. Her opinion, not her colleague's, hers. Rin arrived an hour later, feathers bright with good health. The young engineer's atmospheric modifications had been officially approved after the incident. Commissioner Helix decided that initiative was valuable after all. "How does it feel?" Rin asked. "Being treated like a person." "Strange," Amara admitted. "Nice but strange." Everyone has heard the story now, not just on this station. The Compact Archives published Commissioner Helix's report. Beings across 50 systems know what you did. Amara sighed. "I just wanted to study microbes. And now you are famous. I would rather be left alone with my microscope." Rin laughed. It was a pleasant sound, like wind through feathers. "Too late for that. I heard the Academy of Sciences wants to interview you about human physiology. The Bavrani Historical Society wants to record your family history, and about 100. Journalists have requested access to the station." Amara put her head down on her desk. "It will settle eventually," Rin assured her. "Just a few months of being a curiosity, and then everyone will find something new to talk about." A message notification appeared on Amara's console. She looked at it and groaned. "What is it?" "Commissioner Helix. He wants to see me in his office." The commissioner's office had a large viewport that looked out at the stars. Helix stood before it, all 4 hands clasped behind his back, watching the distant lights. "Dr. Okonkwo," he said without turning, "thank you for coming." "Of course, Commissioner." "I have been thinking about the old stories." Helix finally turned to face her. "The ones about heavy worlders. Navigator Thul told me more after the incident. Apparently, millions of years ago, species from high-gravity worlds were common in this galaxy. They built empires, they conquered systems, they were feared. What happened to them? They destroyed each other, war after war after war, until none were left. The galaxy decided that high-gravity worlds were too dangerous to allow. Any species that developed on such worlds was considered a threat. Amara felt cold. Is that why humans were treated so badly, not just here, everywhere in the compact? Partly, there are many who believe that humans will repeat the mistakes of the ancient heavy worlders, that you will eventually turn your strength toward conquest. I am a scientist. I study bacteria. I know. Helix moved to his desk and sat down. But you could have let us die. You could have saved your strength for yourself. You could have climbed that ladder alone and never come back. He paused. You did none of those things. No. Why? Amara thought about her grandmother, about Lagos, about carrying water and lifting engines and learning that the world made you strong so you could help others. Because that is not what strength is for. Helix nodded slowly. I have recommended to the Compact Council that humanity be given full inclusion status, not novelty membership, full inclusion, voting rights, colonial rights, everything. Amara blinked. That is unexpected. It is overdue. Helix leaned forward. The galaxy has been afraid of strength for millions of years. We have built civilizations that avoid physical effort entirely. We have forgotten what it means to carry our own. Wait, he gestured toward the viewport. But the universe is not kind. Asteroids hit stations, systems fail, disasters happen. And when they do, we need beings who can lift more than their share. Humans are not the only strong species. No, but you may be the first to use your strength to lift others instead of crushing them. Helix smiled. That is worth more than all the empires ever built. Amara returned to her laboratory after the meeting. The stars glittered through the viewport, distant and cold and beautiful. She thought about all the beings out there on all those worlds living their weightless lives. She thought about Earth, where gravity never stopped pulling, where humans learned to stand against the weight of the world from the moment they were born. She picked up her microscope and returned to work. The microorganism from the tesserae moon wiggled under the lens, tiny and fragile, unable to lift anything at all. But that was fine. Amara would carry what needed carrying. It was what she was built for. Outside the viewport, Way Station 16 continued its orbit. Ships came and went. Beings of 100 species lived and worked and traveled between the stars. And somewhere in a small laboratory, a human woman studied bacteria and waited for the next time she would be needed. She did not have to wait long. But that is another story.